Hey SmartPak fans, I'm SmartPaker Dan. She's Dr. Lydia Gray, SmartPak staff veterinarian and medical director, and we are here to answer horse health questions asked and voted on by you. Now for some of you who might be new to the series, just gonna explain how things work a little bit around here. So you submit questions using hashtag #AskTheVetVideo. Dr. Gray then goes through all the questions to pick out ones that we haven't answered before. Those then get put up for voting, which get voted on by viewers just like yourselves. Top 5 then get to be added to video just like this. Now, not only do you get your question answered by Dr. Lydia Gray, but
the amazing Dr.
Amazing Dr. Lydia Gray. I am sorry, my fault. But you also get to win a SmartPak gift card. So it's a pretty cool deal all the way around there. So I can't wait to see what questions you guys submit next time around. We do have to make a little bit of a public service announcement.
Yes.
So our SmartPak videographer and editor, SmartPaker Nels, he and his wife just had twin girls the other day. So the timing of this video might be a little bit off, but
we're very happy for them.
Super excited for Nels.
Come back.
So we asked for a little bit of leniency on some of the airing of this. But with that, we are now ready to jump into our questions. So question number 1 was asked by Harley on YouTube. And Harley said, my horse recently had a keratoma scare in her right hind foot. My farrier noticed a growth, and we had the vet perform x-rays about 1.5 years ago. The vet saw a small growth in the x-ray, but it was nowhere near the bone, so wasn't concerned. She just said to keep an eye on it. Since the x-rays, my vet has left her practice. My horse is barefoot and sound, and we have been documenting taking pictures every time we trim her. My question is, what is a keratoma? How are we treated? And should we have more x-rays taken? And if so, when?
Okay. So whenever there's a hoof question, I turn to
Danvers Child.
Danvers Child. He's the SmartPak hoof health consultant and also a certified journeyman farrier. And he answered each of her questions. What is a keratoma? How are they treated? And when should we have more x-rays taken? So
He's awesome.
if you look for the term keratoma in the general medical literature, you'll likely find that it's simply categorized as a hardened area of skin, basically a callus or a corn. In the equine world, however, the term refers to something much more specific and much more involved, unfortunately. In our world, a keratoma is a benign tumor that forms inside the keratin-producing epidermal cells of the foot.
Okay.
And she kind of described where hers is. Okay. In many cases, the keratoma is cylindrical in shape and grows downwards towards the sole. In other cases, it's more spherical orb-like, I would call it round, and tends to enlarge without descending, so it stays where it is. While keratomas tend to be slow-growing tumors, they do grow and enlarge. So she's right to be after it and taking pictures and documenting it. Eventually, as they grow and expand, they impinge upon the laminar and bony structures within the hoof, exerting pressure, and that's what's causing the pain and lameness. Now, she's not seeing that in her horse yet.
Correct.
Okay.
We're sound.
All right, so then how are they treated? Since keratomas are abnormal, aberrant growths, they can't really be treated. Instead, they require removal, and that's by a veterinarian. So in many, if not all cases, this is done as a standing procedure under local anesthesia. So that's great. Anytime you don't delay the horse down under general anesthesia.
Non-invasive.
Yeah, so the vet, well, it's invasive, but they don't delay the horse down. The vet removes a section of hoof wall to access the tumor and then remove it. The prognosis for full recovery is generally good, but a significant amount of aftercare is required to ensure that the hoof is protected until the new growth occurs, because you're opening it up to the elements. And so until that tissue begins to grow from the inside out, you have to protect it. So the last question is, when should we have more x-rays taken? Keratomas aren't always appreciable or seen on radiographs. Often, they don't evidence distinctly. He has a PhD in literature, so you can tell. I did not write this. He wrote this. So other forms of diagnostic imaging, like an MRI, CAT scan, a bone scan, or nuclear scintigraphy, will usually provide more productive diagnostics versus just like, I think she's photographing from the outside and not looking in. These approaches, but they're more costly as well.
Of course.
Yeah, so make regular observation more expensive than immediate treatment if you do the MRIs and the CAT scans and that much.
So even though she isn't seeing any issues with her horse currently, it is something that is going to continue to grow.
It sounds like it to me, although it's been 1.5 years. So and he alluded to it's definitely slow growing, but she's right to keep an eye on it. And I guess somewhere in there, and she didn't mention working with the new vet since her vet left.
Correct.
Somewhere in there, I would arrange for a regular internal imaging, like a radiograph or beyond, besides just the documenting with pictures from the outside. So, and that's up to her vet. Maybe it's every year, maybe it's every 6 months, and then measure it and see what it's doing.
Because, like Danvers mentioned, it's not something that's going to grow out like an abscess or something like that. It's not.
Nope. Although there is a relationship, they think there's a link between abscesses and keratomas. Like keratomas tend to form where abscesses sort of injured the foot, and there's an area of not quite correct tissue development.
Okay.
It might be like the nidus or the starting point. Is a thought.
So definitely maybe get a new vet to kind of come out and take a look at things since it's been like a year and a
Yeah.
half. And it sounds like she's working very closely with her farrier, which is awesome.
That's great. So
keep us posted with how everything is going, Harley, and hopefully that was helpful for you. So on to question number 2. This was submitted by Rockforth on Instagram. And Rockforth says, what is the best estimate for how much hay to give an average horse on the colder days and nights? I've been reading that hay, rather than grain, is best for warmth using their hindgut. Don't want to risk colic.
Excellent. Good for you.
Good.
So just to start with that thought, yes, hay is the best thing to feed when it's cold because hay not only provides calories, like grain would, but there's also the internal warming you get from the fermentation of the hay. So that's why we like hay. And there is a rule of thumb, and I looked at the NRC, which is, of course, the resource I turn to whenever there's a nutrition question. And they say maintenance DE, which stands for digestible energy, and I'll define that in a minute, for adult horses must be increased 2.5% per Celsius degree.
Ooh, we're going to do some conversion here.
Well, I did it. It's 1.8 Fahrenheit degree. Below their LCT, which is lower critical temperature.
Okay, wow.
So what a rule of thumb, right? Okay,
Yeah.
let's break that down. So digestible energy is the gross energy of a feed minus my favorite part,
Okay.
the feces.
That's your favorite part?
Well, yeah. So it's the energy content of the feed when you subtract out what passed through.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. So and then the LCT is the lower critical temperature. There's this concept called a thermoneutral zone, and that is the low and the high, the range of temperatures in which the horse has to expend no energy to maintain their core temperature.
Okay.
So on the low end, it depends, the range on the low end, because it depends if you live in a southern, more temperate climate or a northern, more cold climate, such as we experienced with the polar vortex this year. So horses in the cold, it's about 41 degrees. Below that, they need to start expending energy, or you need to do something, like put a blanket on, make sure they have shelter, something.
So below 41 degrees is when we need to start.
In the southern climate.
Yes.
In the northern climate, where horses are acclimated to it being cooler, it's more like 5 degrees.
Oh.
So yeah, so the
Party.
lower critical temperature then ranges from 41 in like states like Florida and Texas and Southern California to like 5 in Michigan, Illinois, Massachusetts, Minnesota, up there. Knowing that there are some things that can also change your lower critical temperature, such as the age of the horse, with seniors and young horses being more susceptible to cold stress. The body condition score. So if you're thinner, you're going to feel cold sooner.
So with the body conditioning score, though, that's probably something we want to do before winter even starts to have like a starting point.
Sure. You'd like your horses to go into winter as 5s.
Okay.
And not be thin. And that is also, I didn't find this in the NRC, but I found it in enough other places, of reputable, credible places, that I believe it, that say, as you begin to increase the amount of hay for your horse to accommodate for the decreasing temperature, or it's 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, then start like a day before. So if you know a cold snap is coming, the day before, increase the hay.
Okay, so plan ahead a little bit.
Yeah, and so we said it was 2.5% increase of digestible energy for every 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh my gosh. Just, you know what the NRC then said? The simplest thing to do is just feed good quality hay, free choice.
I like that it's like...
The NRC themselves said, it's too hard to calculate this. Just give them all the hay they want.
Just give them more hay, basically.
Just give them more hay, yeah. So, but they also said, and I mentioned this earlier, in addition to diet, the effects of cold weather can be ameliorated, today's the day for big words, by either shelter, which improves the response to cold stress by 9%, or blanket, 18%,
okay,
or both, 26%.
Whoa.
Yeah, so good ways to reduce heat loss during cold exposure. So it's feeding the hay, the person is exactly right,
yep.
And then providing shelter, and then maybe providing a blanket. But also, like you said, getting the horse prepared ahead of time, making sure the body condition score is correct.
So something I do want to kind of touch base on is a lot of times when you feed hay, you have flakes that aren't always the same. So you think like, oh, I gave a flake, but sometimes the flakes are bigger, sometimes they're smaller. Yeah. So how is a good way for people to know exactly how much they're feeding their horse?
So that's why we set this out today. This is the hay scale that we feed, and it's shiny, so it's probably bouncing off the camera. But you put a couple flakes in a hay net or bag, and then you hang it. Can you just pull on the hook part? And then oh gosh, okay.
Apparently not that strong.
And then it tells you up here, it's like a luggage scale.
So as this gets weighted down, it shows how much weight there is.
Along the line or the gradations of pounds. I think probably kilograms too. I don't know. I can't read it. Must have your glasses for that.
Too much shine on it.
Yeah, that's true.
But nonetheless, that will at least give you a baseline to know that you're being consistent with your feeding.
The other thing I brought up was a weight tape, because we talked about body condition scoring, and that's on a scale of 1 to 9. But then you can also use a weight tape about every 2 weeks or so and make sure your horse is maintaining their weight. So these are all good tools to have, especially during the winter.
Because as you and I were talking about before we started filming, you sometimes take your horse's blanket off, put your horse's blanket on in like November, December, and then you take it off in March, and you're like, whoa.
We do not, you should take your blanket off, I think, every day.
Yeah.
and groom and look under there, because it's not just weight loss or weight gain that could happen, but some skin conditions can occur and all sorts of things. Wounds could happen, so you need to be looking at your horse. Yeah.
So basically, increase the hay and make sure as long as your horse is keeping their body condition score.
And shelter and think of blanket, especially if it's wet.
Yes.
Precipitation, for horses that are not wearing blankets, precipitation wets down their natural fluff and makes them really susceptible to cold and wind.
Yes. So. Perfect. Well, hopefully it's warming up for you guys pretty soon. But let's get into question number 3.
All right.
So this is submitted by Christine on YouTube. And Christine says, I have tried my best to go through your previous videos, but couldn't find one on running fecal egg counts.
What?
I know it's one of your favorite topics. And what to do with the results. There are so many opinions out there on deworming schedules and running those egg counts. What do you suggest? I have a new retired off-the-track standardbred that has an IDEX McMaster's fecal egg count of 700, high shedder. She was dewormed with 1 dose of Panacure because the records I received with her indicated her previous deworming 8 weeks prior was with ivermectin. I see some suggest running another fecal egg count in 14 days after deworming, and some say wait 8 weeks. She says, help, with lots of exclamation points. And understandably, because there is a lot out there for opinions.
Not really. So I got to put this down because I need both hands.
This is, I know, it's your favorite topic.
So I'm going to try to stand my stool. And what's the time? Okay. Yeah. So there's not really a lot of, there's a lot of opinions out there.
Yes.
But not a lot of, there's really only there's only one way to do this.
Okay.
So there's lots of opinions, but one correct one. Okay. Yes. Okay. So the point of a fecal egg count, maybe you could call it, is to identify just exactly what she did. Is your horse a high shedder, so above 500?
Which this one is.
700, or a low shedder. So it could be 0 to 500. Once you know that, then you can sit back and have your pina coladas. You're done, because now you say, all right, I've got a low shedder. My horse is not contaminating the facility with parasite eggs. And so I only have to deworm that horse probably twice a year, beginning of the grazing season in our area, northern climates, the spring, and the end of the grazing season, the fall. Done. You know?
You're off the hook.
You're off the hook. If you have a high shedder like yours, you're on the hook because you need to deworm at the end of every egg reappearance period. Okay, don't be alarmed. We're gonna explain this. When you give a dewormer, you are killing the adult egg-laying worms. Okay.
Yep.
And then the horse that day reinfests itself with parasites, but in egg form. And that has to it has to hatch, it has to make the couple larval stages, and finally it becomes an adult. It's like the cycle, the life cycle of the worm. That time until you have an adult again that's laying eggs is the egg reappearance period. Okay. So the reason the egg reappearance period differs from chemical class. She mentioned ivermectin.
Yes.
Egg reappearance period about 2 months. She mentioned Panicure, which is a benzimidazole, and specifically fenbendazole. Egg reappearance period about 1 month. The reason they're different is because the different classes don't just kill the adult, and ivermectin kills back a larval stage or two. So it takes longer to get to the adult egg-laying stage.
Okay.
Okay, are you with me?
I'm with you.
Good, good.
Okay.
All right. So amoxidectin, which right now is known as Quest, it has a egg reappearance period of about three months or almost 90 days because it kills even farther back. It can get the encysted small strongels. Those are the ones that are embedded in the wall.
Okay.
Yeah, so it has it kills the most stages, baby stages, and then 3 months.
So some of the reason we're seeing some of this confusion is based on like the dewormer she's using, it's hitting different life cycles.
And taking longer to make another.
So that's why we're seeing that 8 weeks, 4.
Right.
Okay.
Because all horses have parasites. We're not going to completely rid them of parasites, so we don't want to. Because there's an immune component that we need them to see parasites so that their body knows to fight them off. That like parasites are not normal, they shouldn't be living here, let's set up a reaction. But what we don't want to do is infest the facility so that they're always recontaminating themselves. And the way you do that is, especially with the high shedders, you give them a dewormer and then you give them another one before there's an adult laying eggs again. So you've got a high shedder, but now that you know that, instead of just the low shedder gets the spring and the fall, the high shedder might get April and June and maybe July and then maybe September, lots more dewormings.
More frequently, yes.
Yeah, because you're trying to keep that horse, that high shedder, from shedding all over the property.
Okay. But so here she also wants to know though when to do that next fecal egg count.
Okay, so egg reappearance period is one of them.
Yep.
So if you give an ivermectin, you give the next one in 2 months. If you give a Panicure, you give it in 1 month.
Okay.
If you give a Strongyte, a pyrantel, you give it in about 6 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. This is more to do with, that's one method. The other method is, what if your dewormer didn't work at all? What if you gave it and the worms are resistant? Because that's why we're putting so much thought and effort into this now, because the worms have outwitted us and they're resistant to our they're foiling.
They're smarter than we think.
They're smarter than us, is what I thought you were going to say. This is probably
Smarter
true.
than me.
Smarter than me too. So what you do is you take a fecal, you get a number, and then you give a dewormer. And then in 10 to 14 days, you redo the fecal.
Because you want to ideally see that number decrease.
Yeah, and there's a formula that your veterinarian can use and tell you if it decreased enough.
Okay.
And it's different for every chemical class. If it did not decrease enough, then don't bother using that dewormer class again, because the worms are laughing at you and nobody likes to be laughed at. Just throw it away and scratch it off the catalogs, and then you have less choices to go to. And that's the other reason. We have less and less choices that work in our horses. So let's use the ones that work and not overuse them. So if an ivermectin works, don't give it every month or every other month year round, because you're overusing it. And the more times you show it to the worms,
it builds up resistance. Yeah,
they learn it, and they're like, the next time they're like, I've seen this one before. I know exactly what to do to avoid getting killed by it.
Okay. So I think this also kind of brings up another point, though. A lot of people do fecal egg count, and then they might see the number lower, or they make it like a 0, and then therefore they think they've like fixed the problem and they don't have to worry about it anymore. But that's not necessarily the case.
No, like I said, horses always have worms.
Yeah.
We're never going to rid them of worms.
Okay.
And that's not the goal. The goal is to reduce the contamination on the property so that you're stepping on less parasite eggs as you're walking, and the horse is taking in less. And so you deworm during the grazing season because that's when the eggs can hatch and become infective, not during the not grazing season. So for us, it's winter.
Yes.
In the southern states, it's summer when it's hot. Eggs aren't hatching. So there's no point in year-round deworming. Okay. Because you're just creating resistance.
Okay. I'm actually super impressed that you answered that in such a short period of time. It's one of her favorite topics.
I know.
But I love that. So it sounds like we now know her horse is a high shedder. We sound like we now have a plan for her to set up, that she's now going to be someone who has to be a little more frequent with her deworming schedule. Unfortunately, you do not get off the hook with your guy. But it sounds like now we understand when to do the fecals and all of that based on the dewormer that she is giving.
Yeah.
There you go. Easy.
Yeah.
So many opinions.
I know, so many opinions, one is right.
All right, well, on to question number 4. This was submitted by Darcy on the Ask the Vet forum. So Darcy wants to know, can we do a segment about ridding my horse of sarcoids? I am currently using bloodroot, but it is painful. My horse has fibroblastic sarcoids on sheath and inner thigh. I have seen some food additives that cure from the inside out.
Okay. Sarcoids. I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet, because it's sarcoids are the most common skin tumor of horses. They're also the most common tumor of horses. I mean, of all kinds of tumors, this is one they get, because horses don't get tumors a lot. They're not like cancer factories. Yeah, like some species are. So sarcoids, there's a relationship between them and the bovine papilloma virus. But there is also a susceptibility gene. So it runs in families, or it's heritable. In that,
so
meaning
genetic component.
There is. It's like, just because the bovine papilloma virus, you're exposed to it, if you don't have that gene, you might not get it.
Okay.
Other things that seem to set you up for this are, we think the virus is spread by flies. And we think that a wound or injury or some scar, an area of scar tissue, is sort of also susceptible to it. She mentioned in a sheath area, so the places, it can happen anywhere in the body, but the places that it's sort of most seen at are areas with wounds or scars, but areas that are thin-skinned or don't have a lot of hair.
So sheath
So
and inner thigh.
yeah. So the groin area, the axilla, which is like the underarm, anything on the bottom of the horse, like the belly, the chest, the head, also.
The face.
Yep, the face, and sometimes the legs. So yeah.
Okay. So she says she's currently using a bloodroot for treatment, but it's a little bit painful.
Yeah.
Are there different treatments?
There are, fortunately, there are lots of treatments. What that means is none of them work that great. Like, there's not one that works all the time.
So this one might work for this horse, this one might work for
Yeah,
that
you don't know
horse.
until you try. The other thing that's annoying with sarcoids is that, anytime you see hair loss, a change in the skin behavior, or a sort of lump or bump or whatever, you need to have the vet out to look at it. The problem is sarcoids, they're not malignant tumors that metastasize and spread throughout the body, but they're very locally aggressive or invasive. And they can lie dormant or latent. One of the tools that a vet might use to diagnose these, because it can look like a lot of different skin things, is what's called a biopsy. But if you do that, you sort of anger the tissue, and you trigger it into sort of this uncontrolled expansion.
So don't upset it.
Don't upset it, yeah.
So is it more one of those things like, if it looks like a duck, let's treat it like a duck?
Your veterinarian will look at it. There's 6 different kinds, and she mentions the fibroblastic kind. That is, it's very weepy, ulcerated, nasty looking. It looks a little bit like proud flesh.
Oh, okay.
And so by a series of questions and examining it and looking at the area and where it is, your vet has a pretty good idea that it's a sarcoid. So treatment options include, and she may have done several of these already before she got to the blood root. So topicals, like she's doing, there's some antiviral creams and a variety of them that you kind of don't use on their own, but you do them after like a attempted surgical excision. So you debulk it. Okay. And because surgery alone is not good enough, then you apply some of these creams. Okay. You can remove by regular surgery, scalpel or scissors or something, but you can also use laser assisted. There's radiation therapy. Oh. And not by what you think of as like shining, rays on it, but embedding radioactive components that stay in it and continue to work on the cells. Other things are cryotherapy. Okay, you can like freeze it. Yep. Let me see what else I didn't mention. Oh, there's BCGs, which is a form of immunomodulation. So this is an intralesional injection. Cisplatin is another agent that can be injected right into the lesion to try to shrink it and remove it.
So once you do these, is there a chance for it to come back?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it could come back with a vengeance if you've angered it. So when you decide to start treating these, you have to be all over it, aggressive, commit. Yeah. Exactly, because you're probably going to upset it, wake up the beast, poke the dragon, poke the bear, whatever they say, and then you have to get on it. So.
Is it a possibility, like if it is just like one area that's maybe not in a harmful location, or you just kind of leave it alone?
You can, yep. Leaving it alone, ignoring it is totally an option. Okay. If it's somewhere where the horse isn't bumping it and aggravating it himself, or the tack is not going to compete, then maybe the best option is just to leave it alone.
Pretend like it's not there.
Yeah, in many cases with horses, just ignoring stuff is kind of your best bet.
After you talk to your vet.
Yeah.
She did mention, though, she did say I had seen some food additives that cure from the inside out. I don't know if she's like more talking like immune type response.
I did not find anything like that in my research. I did find this method that at first I was like, what? I don't. But it was a paper at a proceedings in a proceedings book at a convention and meeting, and it's still under investigation, so I don't think it's readily available to everyone, but you could talk to your vet about it. It's called autologous vaccinations, and what that means is they take a little bit of the tumor, make a vaccine out of it, and inject it back into the horse, trying to stimulate the horse's own immune system to knock it out. So
some new cool stuff
there is some new cool stuff, so yeah. But I couldn't find anything that's feed through.
Awesome. Well, Darcy, I hope that helped and keep us posted with how your guy's doing.
Yeah, but don't send any pictures.
Don't send pictures. So let's move on to question number 5. This was submitted by Teresa on the SmartPak blog at blog.smartpak.com. And Teresa says, is it safe for a horse to wear a fly mask while riding? I really want to protect the horse's eyes.
Okay. I hardly ever ride my horse outside without a fly mask.
Okay.
But there's a reason for that, because he's a head shaker, and so sunlight and air movement and bugs stimulate him to head shake, and then I don't have a good ride.
I didn't know he was a head shaker.
Yes. And so I try to keep him not stimulated. Okay. And I ride in this one, which is the Cashel
Quiet
Ride, long nose, so it's a mesh that goes all the way down over his top of his muzzle.
Like a little veil over the muzzle.
It is like a veil. And then I have the ears and then the eyes. And it's probably more, it's thinner and more see-through than a regular fly mask. And that's probably her concern is, can they see?
Yes.
Is it safe for horse and rider? And I've ridden for 10 years in this. And but this you only use for riding because it is not durable enough to hold up to like turn out. Yeah. And approaching with other horses and stuff. I wanted to mention, because he's a head shaker, and I'm not exactly sure why she wants to ride it, but you can just buy a nose net. I have these two. These hook onto the cavesson, and these are legal to show in, at least in my sport, dressage, which is one of the most rigorous. if you have a note from your veterinarian. There is a rule in the U.S. Equestrian Rule Book that talks about it.
Yeah, I would like to know why we want to protect the horse's eyes. I feel like there's more going on there.
Well, there's so eye things. The horse could have a corneal ulcer that's being treated.
Yeah.
It could be a uveitis, a moon blindness situation. There could be a wound on it. I wrote down some more. The head shaking, the bugs. Yeah, I mean, who knows why this horse needs it? Or maybe she just wants her horse to be comfortable when ridden outside. And I mean, I should say you can ride with this inside too. I mean, there's no.
Yeah.
I actually use it some days when I ride inside. If he already comes in and he's stimulated, like it was a bright day outside or something, then I just keep it on. Because with the head shakers, touching the nose seems to calm them down.
Okay.
So having a nose net on him when I work him seems to keep him.
I feel like we could do a whole episode just on Nemo.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Thank goodness he has a vet as an owner.
Okay, and it works for SmartPak, so I can buy stuff at a discount.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Well, Teresa, I hope you guys enjoy your rides and enjoy your new fly mask while you're at it. But that is it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for submitting your questions. You, of course, can ask your questions anytime on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our blog, and the forum at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. Make sure to just use the hashtag AskTheVetVideo. And don't forget, if your question was answered in this video or in a previous episode, reach out to us at CustomerCare@smartpak.com so you can claim your SmartPak gift card.
And I will tell the last one, quiet ride, cash shell. This is what you want for your horse. So that's what her gift card should go to.
Gift card, all right, towards that. There you go. So until next time, make sure you guys subscribe and have a great ride.